Greetings and welcome back to another iteration of MGTOW Talks. I am here with the young Lord of Oz, Islayprettylies. As the prophecies have foretold, the lords of the penal colony shall rise up from their prisons and conquer the world. And so we are here again with yet another denizen of Oz. I will be posting a link to his channel. He has some interesting videos. And today we are going to talk about marketing in the most general and the broadest sense, the fact that marketing isn't just marketing, and some other ideas pertaining to the notion of intellectuality and what have you. So please, let's offer a welcome to Lord Islayprettylies. Welcome.
Thanks. It's good to be here at last. This has been kind of a long time in the making, I guess. We've been back and forth. Uh, didn't really know whether to make this for a while, but yeah, it's good to be here.
Well, I think the important thing in discussing the idea of marketing, specifically as it pertains to MGTOW or anything else, is that we stay focused on the ideas rather than specific persons that may or may not represent certain things. Because after all, it is all about the ideas at the end of the day. I think there's a lot of confusion that has been directed towards you, and certainly to me, going way back when I spoke of marketing. It's often pointed out that you're marketing too, and in some broad sense that's true. But I'd like to point out that as human beings, we have limited, I would call them semantic categories, and we have this term food, right? And you have broccoli, which is an extremely wholesome, healthy food, and you have Skittles. They share the title food, but they have almost nothing in common. I mean, Skittles is just crap. It's not healthy. It's not good for you. Broccoli, on the other hand, is one of the best vegetables foods out there. You have golf, and then you have Thai kickboxing. They're both quote unquote sports, right? And I think it's the same when it comes to marketing. We have this broad umbrella term, marketing, and unless you actually take the time to dissect that, then you're left with that, and then you can say, well, you're doing marketing too. Everyone's doing marketing. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, marketing in a sort of broad sense, I think the kind of marketing that people really dislike, really take an issue with, is the sort of marketing that misleads people. So, what you do is you can have like a single, highly representative, isolated piece of information, for example. Um, it might be a slogan on a product, it might be the thumbnail for a video. And, you've seen it on YouTube all the time. You've seen these sorts of videos where, like, there's some very attractive woman, probably showing a lot of cleavage, got big titties, and she's making some, oh my God, sort of face. And then you click on the video, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with pretty ladies and what's going on. So, what really gets on people's nerves is when a single highly isolated piece of information is misleading people and causing them to click on things. People don't really mind being marketed. They don't really mind a thumbnail that accurately represents the content of the video at the same time. It's useful for the process of categorization and organization that, this is a video about this. And I can tell that just by the thumbnail. I don't need to evaluate the full content of the video just to figure out what's going on with it, sort of thing. So I think that's where the sort of line between what people consider bad and good marketing sort of begins, I guess.
Yeah, though it should be pointed out that disingenuous marketing isn't always detectable. That is to say, if you're good at disingenuous marketing, then in all likelihood, the people that the material is being marketed to aren't going to notice that
Yeah.
there is a disingenuous aspect to it. I mean, that's actually, I suppose, the high art form of that sort of marketing. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that I mentioned this in a previous video. You'll have slogans from, say, Coca-Cola or whatever, and say ridiculous things, enriches your life, and and for some reason that works, even though it obviously has nothing to do with the product.
Hmm.
So I think that there's a marketing is, I think everyone does it, as I mentioned before. Unless, say, if you're making videos on YouTube, unless you just have a black screen with a WMV file, tacked at the end, then you're going to do some kind of marketing. There's no doubt that, say, the images I use, the still I like to use of the gorilla reading Darwin's iconic text, that's a kind of marketing. I don't deny that. But I'd like to think, for example, that's representative of myself, though I'm not nearly as strong as a gorilla is, like to be, but still. Yeah, there's a difference between representing yourself as you are and what you want to convey, and representing something that just has nothing to do with it. And I think the really interesting question is, say, within the MGTOW community, is if we're going to be forced essentially to use the term marketing, how do we best go about that? And personally, my take, and I've said this many times before, is that we should do our best to shy away from the disingenuous form. Slogans for the sake of slogans, catchphrases for the sake of catchphrases. This is probably not the best way to understand things. And after all, despite what people claim, if you want to peel away the layers of, say, MGTOW, understanding is the core of it.
Yeah, I'd just like to talk about the idea of, a lot of this thing you can't even consciously recognize. It's very subtle.
Sure.
Um, yeah, this goes like it's easier to understand if you look at a more simple sort of situation. So you've got the very rudimentary, very crude psychology of a turkey, right? And it's been shown in a number of experiments that you can mislead a turkey to engage in all sorts of silly behavior if you do certain things. So baby chicks of the turkey make a cheep cheep noise, right? And this cheep cheep noise causes the mother turkey to kind of uh, warm it up and keep it close to her and feed it and stuff like that. And there's also a natural predator of the turkey, the polecat. And if you present, a polecat to a turkey, it'll respond with aggression. It'll respond with getting angry and stuff like that. But if you make a replica of a polecat make the cheep cheep noise, it'll actually treat the polecat like a baby turkey. So there's that highly representative piece of information, the cheep cheep noise, and it misinterprets that as the baby chick, and then it does the fixed action pattern of, taking care of the chick and feeding the chick and that sort of thing. So it's very subtle and unconscious, and the turkey doesn't really understand what's going on. Now, when you apply that to humans, um, obviously human psychology is significantly more complex, but we still employ those same sort of shortcuts. And like for an example of that sort of shortcut, there's the concept of like social proof. The more if there's social evidence of people doing things in that particular situation, you're led to believe that that is the appropriate sort of behavior for that situation. So, for example, a gunshot goes out and you look around and you notice everyone else is very nonchalant about everything. That would be social proof. That would be a highly indicative piece of information to show you that you shouldn't be really this worried about it or upset about it or go to investigate or anything, right? And that's sort of why the bystander effect happens. So yeah, it's very subtle and it works in ways that we don't really consciously acknowledge a lot of the time.
I think people often, we should talk about this a little bit more for people who are not familiar with fixed action patterns, but every animal, including humans, has a series of fixed action patterns, and despite having highly evolved brains, we have them too. And I think social proof is one of them. Is the very situations that arise that you mentioned can elicit fixed action patterns. You know, do we run screaming from the cinema, or do we just stay in our seats, etc. And I'm curious though. You seem to be. I mean, you're quite young, but you're quite well versed in this stuff. How did you familiarize with yourself with this?
I uh I sold things. I don't want to really reveal what that is,
Well,
but yeah, I sold things for a long period of time, and I studied in my spare time, how to get better at selling things, and I kind of grew to understand these sort of things, and uh, yeah, that's so basically I have lived experience of doing marketing and doing sales and that sort of stuff within a job context.
so there's really no better way. I mean, certainly having done it, there's no better way to familiarize yourself, I would think, than by doing that. Now, within the marketing context, based on your experience, what are the sort of fixed action patterns, if you will, that humans display that make them responsive to certain marketing techniques and vice versa? What techniques tend to work that seem to be universal in marketing that seem to apply to humans?
Um, Scarcity is a big one, I'd say. The very, limited time only. We only have so much stock, etc., etc. And there are subtle, kind of underhanded ways you could do that. Like, for example, there are some sneaky tricks where you lead people to believe that a lot of other people are interested in the product, and there's a limited quantity of the product, um, and then the product will probably be gone by like the afternoon or whatever, so they have to get in quick and get it now. Even if the thing that is scarce isn't that valuable, we still kind of place this sort of extra artificial value on top of it, um, just because of the chance that it'll be gone later, sort of thing. And
Does the technique of scarcity, or at least artificially manufacturing scarcity through a message, would I mean, since I have no experience in marketing, I'm asking you as someone who's directly been directly involved, does
yeah,
this actually produce interest when there was no interest beforehand?
oh yeah, certainly, certainly, absolutely. Um,
So, for
it's
example, I'm watching, in theory at least, I'm watching some commercial about, fuck, I know, silver laden watches, and I have no interest, never had thought about it. And in theory, because of the way the commercial is presenting the information, I could somehow be drawn in because, oh, I might lose out on that. Now, I have to say, I mean, I sound arrogant. I never felt compelled myself, and I know I don't work on with individual examples. You have to look at the larger aggregate
yeah.
I see something. As far as things I wanted, I either want it or I don't. Certainly, if I already want something and it's hyped, uh, yeah, I might be more inclined. But I think particularly at least I'm interested in this idea of not really having any interest, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're thinking you want this too. So this is
Oh
a
well,
technique that works apparently.
yeah. This is a technique that works, but usually this alone won't sort of work. I mean, even with the best, hard salesman that I knew, there was still a significant portion of people who just weren't interested and weren't going to buy. But I think there were plenty of people who came to regret their purchases and didn't think their purchases really had that much merit behind them, when they could fairly evaluate them, post buy, I guess.
Yeah. So as long as there's a nominal, minimal interest in the product, I mean, I can say for myself, I'm just using video game evidence since I am a pretty large consumer of video games or computer games. That those of you who know the game BioWare produced Dragon Age Inquisition. Turned out to be, in my opinion, a very poorly done game. But having had interest in the previous titles and being either quite enthused or mildly disappointed, I let myself sort of buy into the hype, and I just said, okay, I'll pre-order it anyway, and
Yeah.
it turned out to be pretty forgettable. I think that's the worst aspect of the game, but uh, and yeah, I think that in my case, that was an example of allowing myself to be manipulated. Then again, it's hard to say, give a product a try or not. Now, what is the potential harm of this sort of marketing technique? I mean, is it for example, I used to work in the sports nutrition industry, and I learned being involved there that say in the United States you can get away with saying a lot more about your product than you could say in Germany. For example, in Germany you couldn't say, this product is going to put 30 kilos of muscle on you or something. But you can kind of make up bullshit in the United States, put it on a product, the best muscle building formula ever. Whereas that's actually against the law in Germany. You can't say that because it's unless it's actually testable and true. How is that in Australia? And two, what are the consequences in your experience, having experienced this and been involved in the case of say buyers, people who buy products and are disappointed with it?
Um, yeah, I guess the harm is that there are probably multiple sorts of products that exist today that they don't make money, and they aren't bought because they're good products. They make money and they're bought because they're effective at making people believe that they're going to do something that they really aren't. They're good at misrepresenting the contents of their, sort of product, I guess you could say. And yeah, I guess the harm would be in a, on a macro scale, that perhaps better, more effective products are left undiscovered, or just outcompeted by the, shoddier, more effectively marketed products. It's just whatever genuine value and merit a product has to offer to someone's life might be left undiscovered, or might be outcompeted in the marketplace. And at the same time, good marketing, good honest marketing, can also allow that same product that has a lot of merit and a lot of value to be better discovered. So, marketing isn't like some unilateral bad thing. I think it's just
But there does
there's a
seem to
potential.
be an overall trend, and this is based on my own involvement in work. For once again making reference to the fitness industry, which I worked in for a couple of years. Admittedly, I was a grunt, but I could observe a lot. That I had a boss that this was at a fitness expose that chastised his underling because there was an 18-year-old guy who looked at a product. This product was Tribulus. Those of you who know familiar, this is a product that supposedly, and there is some information that supports this. There are some data, boosts your testosterone levels. However, most of this occurs, in men who are past 40 or 50. So this 18-year-old guy goes up and says, can I increase my testosterone levels with this? And this colleague of mine, friend of mine, time he couldn't, in all honesty, say. I mean, he could have lied and said, yeah, if you buy this, but it's bullshit because it wouldn't have done anything for him. And he was actually, he was castigated by the boss. So I think there's always that tendency, in order to sell, whatever it might be, to cut corners and just be dishonest. And I think, I'm a complete layman in this area, obviously, but when I observe from the outside, it seems that people who aren't willing to cut corners, people who are willing to present an authentic image of themselves or their product or both, ultimately they seem to lose out to the, well, let's put it, the more conventional, more popular forms of marketing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and that's a shame, really. Because to be brutally honest, the particular thing I was selling, the particular company I worked for, and the major reason why I, sort of quit that job and gave up on it was because I ultimately thought that the product wasn't doing the things that it was, claiming it could do. And I think that, I may have, outcompeted them in that particular respect, and, sort of, uh, I guess, cheated them out of money they perhaps deserved in some sort of, I mean, life isn't fair, but, if life was fair, then they would deserve that sort of money instead. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
so yeah,
I think actually a big believer. Obviously, life is not fair, but there's no reason to, in my view, to impose, at least actively, purposefully, more unfairness than is necessary.
yeah,
Just like I said, selling basically a teenager, a bunch of pills that aren't going to help him at all, even though the boss might say, "Oh no, you should tell him that anyway." So this seems to me the fundamental conflict. Then we come to YouTube, and almost all successful YouTube channels that I can think of, with few exceptions, rely on things like clickbait, a certain period of time that lapse that captures the average human attention span. And I know the people who run these channels pay attention to that. They say, we can't go over 5 minutes because people stop paying attention, and you can track that. That's all. That's all in the analytics. And I mean, one guy that comes to mind is Vsauce, who you might have probably are familiar with him. He's got millions of subscribers. An American guy. He does sort of sciencey videos, but he has that usual flash. Every video starts, "Hey guys, Michael here. Check this out." That kind of thing. And but the thing is, I don't think the people are interested in the topics per se so much as they are in the flash surrounding it. Or say if Matthew Santaro, the eyeball guy, as I like to call him, the list of, I don't know, the 10 biggest predators in the ocean or something. People don't have an interest in these lists really. They're there for the flash and the eyeballs popping out, I guess. Now, I guess I'm a bit of a freak because I've never found that sort of thing appealing. It turns me off immensely, but it seems to be the most effective way of presenting anything. And this is across all genres. There are a few exceptions I can think of. There's a guy named Gopher who makes kind of really long, helpful videos related to gaming mostly.
yeah,
And
I'm a fan.
oh yeah, yeah, okay. So yeah, Gopher. I mean, I've mentioned him on my gaming channel, and the fun thing about him is, I mean, he's pretty politically correct. I'll grant him that, but his stuff is helpful. He's not. He takes his time, and despite this, it's just it's like a freak occurrence. It's like the comet you only see once every 500 years. He actually is quite successful. But usually, if you look at, say, the gaming genre on YouTube, which is totally oversaturated, it's why you can't really build a channel. It's mostly the really popular people are these, very shortish videos. Even the LPs tend not to be longer than 15 minutes. With "Hey guys, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe, and share every blah blah blah," that kind of thing. And
Yeah,
the this is almost universally true. There tend to be a few exceptions, but I think in the case of Gopher, it's because if you ever played Skyrim, his videos, if you not familiar with modding, which has become a pretty complicated affair, they can really help you. And you can't just quick skip through that. You actually have to look at the steps and pay attention. But I find myself as a content producer, it's not a dilemma because I would never I can't. I mean, I could in theory do the flashy thing. It's just so not true to me. But if you want to present an authentic image and authentic content, and I should go on the record. I've never faulted people for wanting to make money. I'd like to make money off of my channel too, but I don't want to sell my metaphorical soul in the process of doing so. But there seems to be an almost insurmountable blockade there because it's so, not specifically for me, but for anyone who wants to have a more authentic, sort of slow approach to things rather than the conventional marketing one. And I guess the fundamental question when it comes to MGTOW is, I mean, how are the ideas best propagated? Now, I arose at a time when there were no conventional marketing means it was all, heart and mind. It was mostly Barbarossa stuff. There weren't hey guys, check me out on anything like that, and it worked fine. I don't really see. You've talked about in videos certain content producers talking about basically we just get the message out to as many people as possible and at all costs and what have you. And what is, in your opinion, the risk of dilution? I mean, there is a point where a message can mean absolutely nothing if people don't understand what the principles behind it.
Yeah, I feel like again, a lot of these marketing techniques focus on a single highly isolated piece of information, and the single highly isolated piece of information doesn't really represent the whole foundation of ideas that MGTOW sort of represents very accurately. So I think when you try to take I guess a more marketing friendly, more kind of what would seem superficial to you, more superficial approach to this sort of content, I think something is lost in translation because you don't really um, explain things in many explicit terms. There's a lot of like suggestive sort of flowery language, like can't beat the feeling of a Coke. Like instead of like
It
if
tells
you
you nothing,
were
basically. It just says
yeah, it
absolutely
tells you
nothing.
nothing. Tells you
Yeah.
nothing. So you could have like a flowery sentiment about MGTOW that sounds, good and all marketable at face value, but when you really, dissect it and analyze it, what does it mean? It really doesn't mean anything at all. So I think there's a sacrifice, a price to be paid in order to when you're trying to propagate a view, when you're trying to maximize the effectiveness of propagating these MGTOW ideas, you sacrifice comprehension of the ideas, and that can lead to a kind of state where it's like we've got a bunch of guys calling themselves MGTOW, but they don't understand they don't understand so many key concepts like maybe we have half the freaking world calling themselves MGTOW, but I ask one of these so-called MGTOW, what hypergamy is, and he doesn't even know what he's talking about.
Yeah. I just actually thought of a great marketing site. The red pill. Life's better at half the cost. I mean, that's. I was actually recently talking to someone about this. How with the idea of the red pill now has become so. It's such a diluted idea. I mean, I don't even know what it means anymore. And now someone literally, I think I might have mentioned this in a video, took this literally and tried to explain to me, and I've been around for a while, what the red pill was. But the only reason I said that is because you have PUAs talking about a red pill. You have MRAs talk about a red pill. You have, I don't know, government conspiracy people talking about everything is sort of the red pill. And it's come to the point where, what red pill are you even talking about? And MGTOW, I don't even when I kind of glaze over comments written by people I'm not familiar with about MGTOW, I get the impression that people just don't even there's no idea, there's no real consensus as to what it means. I mean, I guess there's the old thing, a bunch of guys who can't get laid or whatever. That's been around for quite some time. But or there's a bunch of guys that hate women. Very rarely very rarely do you get the sort of the core elements that I think that are really essential. I think understanding basically basic human reproductive biology, both of men and women, and I think Is that harmful in some sense? In some sense, I think it is harmful. I mean, there's another. We were talking about this before. This idea that it's referred to as sort of pseudo intellectual. There's this sort of what I would view as sort of manufactured opposition between groups of people. You have quote unquote pseudo intellectual people supposedly hoarding knowledge to themselves and keeping people out of the loop versus someone who wants to just spread it to the masses. But if I were to actually redefine that, it's not, if you want to call it intellectual, whatever. It's just about being specific and knowing specifically what you're talking about, rather than talking in the absolute broadest of generalities to the point where everything is amorphous and loses all meaning, as is the case with the red pill. I mean, the red pill. I mean, I don't know what it means anymore, unless someone tells me the red pill I'm talking about is this variant.
Yeah, like I've even seen like stuff on like 4chan and 8chan how they because they also make reference to the red pill in sort of like a political sense, and then there's even like these ridiculous like images going around how differentiating like red pill, burgundy pill, black pill. It's gotten ridiculous and silly and over the top. But what were you talking about before that? The pill thing.
Uh,
Lost my train of thought now.
well, after that, I was talking about this manufactured opposition
Oh
between.
yeah, the man. Yeah, yeah. Like yeah. What we're really trying to, I think people just have a habit of declaring us pseudo intellectuals when we kind of just we're trying to do all the rigor associated with really. We're basically just trying to apply like a foundation of really solid evidence for the kind of points we're making and the arguments that we're making. We're trying to, I don't know, we're trying to just support our
Well, I
ideas.
think I
And
think we're just I think the proper way of phrasing it might be methodologically sound, or at least attempting to be
yeah, yeah, yeah.
methodologically sound. I think
Yeah.
I can't help but think, though. I mean, you're obviously of a different generation than mine, and then their generation still further back. That as I used to be a teacher, I saw the gradual transformation of, say, learning about anything, for this matter, could apply to anything, as something that required time and rigor and investment to just kind of get quick results, you know breeze over stuff. And I feel that this has kind of become the dominant mentality just throughout the world, in fact, where it, education, not in the sense of going to school or something, but education as in learning about things, is no longer something that requires time and investment, and is worthwhile, but rather you just got to get the basics, get it all across as quickly as possible. And this kind of fits into this whole marketing scheme. It needs to be fun. I used to game with someone. She was a microbiologist by trade, if I recall right, and she also taught physics, all kinds of sciencey stuff. And she had remarked on this as well. She'd seen that there's this idea that people are complaining, this isn't fun. But I mean, perhaps it's not fun in a conventional sense, but I don't know how it is. Do you feel? I mean, is it okay if I mention your age?
Yeah, sure, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean,
Whatever.
you're in your young 20s, and I can't help but think that this sort of, yeah, the instant gratification aspect of our culture has come to become predominant, more so than in days bygone, and maybe that has a lot to do with the internet. I mean, all of us get annoyed when we click on a website and it takes longer than a second to be teleported to that website,
Yeah.
essentially. So even I'm guilty of it as well. But what in your peer group, to the extent that you pay attention to them, do you notice this? Do you notice, as someone yourself who's more interested in maybe a more traditional, methodologically sound approach to understanding the world, what do you notice in your peer group?
Um yeah, I noticed that it's very much focused on sort of sound bites and sort of sensationalized sort of ideas. And when I'm not that kind of guy who will like, really talk extensive politics at like a party or something.
All right.
But for example, like someone will bring up some, sort of half-baked political opinion, and maybe, the next day I'm just talking with them in private and I try to grill them on the details. They really have nothing to offer me. They really have nothing of substance to really talk about or explore in that particular respect. And I think what's happening is that um, it's not really a generational thing. I think it's just a human thing. I think what's happened is there's been various inventions that are really effective and really work within human psychology because, like, the internet is basically just constant novelty all the time, on demand, whatever you want, sort of thing. And there's a certain I think there's a certain enjoyment to be had in learning things and exposing yourself to constant novelty, even if it isn't the sort of rigorous, detail focused learning. Um, and this idea of like a super stimulus, it's. I'd like to talk about how really like popular porn is. Like, for example, pornography has like really taken off. The statistics on it are absolutely huge. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but trust me, a lot of people watch porn. And what is porn basically? It's basically a super stimulus of what humans were exposed to in the evolutionary sense. So a man exposed to a naked woman would get, really excited and really happy about that sort of thing. But now that there's this modern convenience of internet pornography, he's exposed to a wide variety of novel, naked females, and he takes a ridiculous amount of interest in that as a result. So technology, or the mechanization effect, as you've coined it before, has kind of hijacked our attention spans by producing these sorts of super stimuli.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating comment because I always have to remark on the fact that with the internet, which is essentially I like to call information teleportation, never before in the history of our species have we had access to quite literally the world's knowledge at our fingertips. I mean, if you really are interested in learning about something, you can you can learn about it on the internet. It's out there. There are going to be articles written in a straightforward manner, introductory articles, more intermediate ones. Everything's out there, and yet that doesn't seem to be the focus of people. For the most part, people are focused, as you pointed out, on the sort of the super stimulus, the soundbite effect, if you want to call it that. Get the sound bites out there, and no, this is not going to produce a thorough understanding of anything. And I'm just for myself, I really wish that there was some technique that would help break that pattern, but it seems to be so overwhelming that it's sort of a juggernaut. It's unstoppable, and it keeps on proceeding along at this pace. I'm guilty of it too. When I'm, for example, trying to learn something new in Sony Vegas or something, I'll look up a tutorial and I'll think, oh shit, it's 15 minutes. Why can't it be 5? I think we all, we all sometimes are subject to this. We just want to get the thing as quickly as possible. But the reality is, some of the most interesting and important information we want to get, and if we want to learn how to do things, it's going to take some time. There's no quick and effective method to learning how to, I don't know, work video editing software. It takes time. You have to read or look up stuff on it, just as an example. And the same is true of the quote unquote a red pill. I mean, if you want to summarize the red pill and as something like women suck. First off, it's an empty statement. It doesn't tell you anything. But a lot of people. I see this quite frequently. Did you watch the sexy MGTOW interview with I Am Serious? Because he,
Yeah, I did actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, his approach to things, I just don't really agree with it. And it might not be intentional on his part, but the sort of soundbite effect, it seems to be so overwhelming. I don't know if we can actually stop it. And I would just hope that within the larger MGTOW community, I do get the impression that most people who are paying attention to MGTOW content, uh, at least of the older school variety, they're the kinds of people that really want to understand things and sit and are willing to sit through things and listen, as opposed to, give me my sound bite, give me my daily soundbite of whatever. I think to some extent it's almost akin to a radio show. People who tune into the radio, their daily radio show in the morning, they're not really listening to what they're saying, but it's kind of in the background and sort of running. And so
Mm.
you kind of have this sort of phantom companion, if you will, accompanying you every day. It's another phenomenon I've observed. There's the whole daily phenomenon is something that, whether it applies to MGTOW or anything else, people really latch on to that. I've
Yeah, that's
noticed.
a technique of consistency. That's sort of a marketing technique as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, and the thing is, what I've noticed is some things can be consistently bad. But if I mean, consistency tells you nothing. I mean, the implication is that to be consistent, that is to produce something all the time, every circumstance, is going to be good. But that doesn't necessarily mean that at all. Someone might produce only one video a month, and it could be absolutely brilliant. Other people might produce, I don't know, 100 videos a month, and it might be utter crap. But there's this idea that uh, sort of this daily production of whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be video content. Is just inherently a good thing. Uh, and I don't see the evidence for it. Any thoughts? I mean, well, in actual marketing, I mean, how does that manifest itself when you're actually selling a product? I imagine it wouldn't apply to certain products, but
okay, so like you basically how do I'm trying to think of an example because it doesn't really apply to my specific product, but I'm trying to think of a product where this sort of thing would apply.
well, it doesn't even need to be, I guess, daily, right? I mean, most of the
Yeah.
really popular channels, for example, have some slogan. Every Wednesday and Saturday, get your blah 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 soundbite. I mean, and so it's. I guess that's also part of the consistency. Every specific day of the week, you get this. So
Mm.
I don't know, but I think ultimately, if we want to get back to the core of what we've been talking about, there is a price to be paid, and dilution is something that is consequential. It's to not understand something and yet claim to be some adherent of that something can get you into some serious canine fecal matter sometimes. It's just, and I'm not even implying with that statement that it should be stopped or it can be stopped. It is what it is. But we should be aware, and I think this is why we've had this discussion of why these things work, how they work, and how humans are wired. Just because we react in a general sense most positively to the production of sound bites, no matter what the topic, doesn't mean that's necessarily the most healthful and sound approach to going about something. And it doesn't even matter if it's MGTOW or really anything else. The the old saying goes, there are no shortcuts, and there's a reason why people used to say that. And for the most part, most people, whatever they do, don't have access to these shortcuts. If you really want to get good at something, even if you have inherent talent, or want to understand something, even if you're naturally inclined to understand it, you have to spend some time with it. Else, you're just gonna get the sound bites. I'm always find myself reluctant to say. I mean, I hear lots of things, but unless I know something about it, I'm reluctant to comment on it. I wouldn't. I would never, for example, make a video about something I've just sort of been thinking about and hadn't actually spent any time looking up or researching. So, and even though I have not millions, but a great number of topics in my head where I need to research it because they've been circulating there. But do you have anything else to say? Otherwise, we'll wind it down. I think we focused on the core topics that we wanted to treat.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm not condemning anyone. I'm not really angry or upset with anyone really. It's just I just want to kind of promote a self-awareness of these sorts of things and you know basically question, am I getting something of substance? Am I getting something of value and merit out of the things that I consume and the things that I watch and the things that I buy. And perhaps maybe if you if you care to uh, learn about the same sort of stuff that I have, so you can get a better understanding of when people are trying to pull a fast one on you, sort of salesman sort of lingo. So yeah, I just want to promote a sort of self-awareness of this sort of thing. It's ubiquitous. It's not going anywhere, and I won't pretend that it's going anywhere, and I won't necessarily condemn people for engaging in it. But it's
Well, it's
it's something
tempting,
to
right? I mean,
keep in.
if it works, and we know that these sorts of things work, these techniques, not participating in it unless you have some specific reason seems almost absurd. I mean, if something works, generally speaking, people use it, and if the sole goal of someone, say on YouTube, is just to become popular and make as much money as possible, which is, I suppose, a perfectly reasonable goal in some respects, then everything else be damned, use those techniques. But I think that's exactly it, as you said. It's really about the awareness and understanding things, and understanding that we too as human beings are subject to fixed action patterns, and we have as human beings some very bad habits, but we're also capable of overcoming them and looking past these rather negative inclinations that we have.
Yeah, like no, actually, it's just a reiteration. No, I think we're quite done here. I think we've said that's all that need to be said.
Okay, well, let's all thank the High Lord of Oz for being with us and explaining some of this stuff. It was quite interesting. Someone who's not directly involved in marketing, and I should be seeing you quite soon again. So thanks again for being here, and I will talk to the rest of you at some other time ordained by the gods. Everyone take care, and bye bye.